What's up, nerds, and welcome to the Nerd History Podcast, a proud part of the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network, and your home for celebrating the nostalgia that shaped the world of nerd culture today. I'm Radio Matt, the Director of Content and Resources for Love Thy Nerd, and joining me today is the icon, the showstopper, the main event, John Birkey. How you doing, John?
Oh, man, I'm fantastic. After that, there's how can I possibly live up to any of that?
Well, you know, it's an easy episode today,
Okay.
so maybe you can hit him out of the park. John is subbing in for Daedra over these next several episodes as we take a deep look at the nerd history of WrestleMania. And starting with this episode, we're going to switch things up a little bit, or a lot of it. As many of you know, we've been testing out the Nerd History mini docs on the channel. In fact, we released one focusing on The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak just a couple weeks ago. And as we produce these, we've realized that it might be worth trying to revert back to one show, folding in the mini doc elements. So for these next 4 episodes, we'll be kicking off each show with a mini documentary about our topic, and then ending with their typical podcast discussion, which should be much more focused and not as lengthy. So each day this week, we will have a new part of the WrestleMania story. Today, we're going to take a look at WrestleManias 1 through 10. Tomorrow is 11 through 20. Wednesday will be 21 through 30. And Thursday, WrestleManias 31 through 40.
Yeah, I'll just come back on Thursday.
Then
They started off pretty slow.
finally, on Friday morning, the first official day of WrestleMania weekend, John and I will be back for our 2 words go home special.
So long.
What are we talking about?
What are we talking about on our go home special?
On the go home special.
We're talking WrestleMania. Well, so we haven't been here for 6 months.
It's been a minute. Yeah,
it's been a minute. Your life is. I don't know anything about your life anymore. My life is, because I'm too focused on my life, which is
both of
crazy.
us are too busy. Yeah, both of us are too busy to care about the other schedule.
Pretty much it. And so we're just gonna kind of be going over, man, what have we missed? Be like Thomas Jefferson there in the middle of Hamilton. So what did I miss?
I gotta watch Hamilton again. How many times have you seen Hamilton?
I don't know, 2 or 3.
It's a solid 7 or 8 for me.
It's
I love it.
I mean, I've listened to all of it a lot.
Oh, okay, that counts.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was good. But it's a commitment if you're gonna get through it.
Right. It's a solid.
So it's a lot more of I've watched it in
3.5
passing because Hillary was watching it.
So all in all, we've got 5 WrestleMania shows coming your way this week. Man. Come learn all about the show's history or get a refresher, and then get hyped for the granddaddy of them all this weekend.
Don't get hyped. Stay hyped.
The very first WrestleMania was held on March 31st, 1985, just a few months before I was born. When were you born?
I was born in 1990. Yeah. It was a few years before I was born.
Today, we're going to try to quickly cover...
You're so close to 40, Matt.
It's this year.
So we could do some math here.
We're going to try and quickly cover each one of the first 10 events with a little history, some fun facts, and some key moments. And since there is so much to get to, let's kick it off right now. For 4 decades, one event has defined professional wrestling on a global scale. The lights, the moments, the legends. It all happens at WrestleMania. This is a 4-part documentary series tracing the rise, the chaos, the reinvention, and the legacy of WWE's biggest night. From the birth of Hulkamania to the fall of the Bloodline, this is the nerd history of WrestleMania. Before the lights, the stadiums, and the global reach, there was an idea. WrestleMania didn't start as a sure thing. It started as a gamble. Over 10 years, it grew from a celebrity-stacked variety show into a proving ground for icons. Hogan, Savage, Warrior, Bret, Shawn. These were the years when moments became mythology, and when Madison Square Garden was the center of the wrestling universe. This is the story of how WrestleMania became WrestleMania. So picture this. It's 1985. Pro wrestling is still living in regional territories, not the global machine we know today. But Vince McMahon, he had a vision. He didn't just want to grow the WWF, he wanted to flip the whole industry on its head. He wanted a mega event, something that combined wrestling, celebrities, and mainstream entertainment into one massive spectacle. That's how WrestleMania was born. WrestleMania I, to be exact, March 31st, 1985, Madison Square Garden. McMahon had put everything on the line, financially and professionally, betting that this one night could launch his company into a new stratosphere. Vince McMahon financed WrestleMania I with personal money. If the event bombed, he wouldn't just lose a show, he'd lose the entire company. And it worked. The event aired on closed-circuit TV to over 1 million people. It didn't just succeed, it became the foundation for the biggest brand in wrestling. If it had flopped, World Wrestling Entertainment probably wouldn't be here today. He brought in names that turned heads: Muhammad Ali, Cyndi Lauper, Liberace, and Mr. T. Pop star Cyndi Lauper's involvement wasn't just for show. Her MTV fame brought in a whole new audience, especially young fans. Her feud with manager Lou Albano sparked the rock and wrestling connection, which helped launch WWF into mainstream culture. The main event, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T teaming up against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. It wasn't about pure wrestling anymore, it was entertainment. But Mr. T, the celebrity co-main eventer, nearly backed out the day of the show due to backstage tension, mainly with Roddy Piper, who didn't want a non-wrestler in his spotlight. Cooler heads and likely business minds prevailed. WrestleMania I wasn't just a wrestling show, it was a moment, a make-or-break gamble that ended up reshaping the entire business. WrestleMania I was a hit. The gamble paid off. So for WrestleMania II, the World Wrestling Federation decided to go bigger. And not just in hype, in geography. On April 7th, 1986, WrestleMania II became the first and only Mania to be broadcast live from 3 different cities on the same night. The idea was to make it feel like a coast-to-coast event, a national spectacle. The concept was ambitious. Maybe too ambitious. The technical side was clunky, crowd reactions were all over the place, and the pacing dragged, but in terms of spectacle, it still delivered moments people talk about. Vince McMahon wasn't trying to top WrestleMania I with better wrestling, he wanted a bigger show. WrestleMania II was about expanding reach, proving this wasn't a one-time phenomenon. Vince tried to take WrestleMania nationwide, literally, by running it in 3 cities at once: Madison Square Garden in New York, the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, and the LA Memorial Sports Arena. It had never been done before in wrestling. Each location had its own mini-card. In New York, we saw Roddy Piper box Mr. T in a worked boxing match that ended in chaos. The 20-man Battle Royal in Chicago featured wrestlers and NFL stars, including the Bears' William the Refrigerator Perry, who got a huge reaction. He even had a moment where he tricked Big John Studd into thinking he was eliminated, only to pull Studd over the top rope instead. The main event in LA wasn't just about Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy, it was about the cage. This was Hogan's first steel cage match on pay-per-view, and the image of him climbing out, bloodied but victorious, became part of early WrestleMania lore. WrestleMania II wasn't perfect, but it proved WWF was serious about scale. It wasn't just about wrestling anymore, it was about pushing limits, whether or not the tech could keep up. WrestleMania III was wrestling turned into mythology. March 29th, 1987, the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan, over 93,000 fans packed the place. At least that's the official number. The actual number is still debated, but no one denies it looked and felt enormous. That visual of the sea of fans in the Silverdome, iconic. Even if you shave it down, it is still the biggest crowd pro wrestling had ever seen at the time. The energy was unreal. This wasn't just a wrestling show anymore, it was a pop culture event. The card had some decent matches, but two moments defined the night. First, Ricky Steamboat versus Macho Man Randy Savage. It was for the Intercontinental title and it stole the show. Fast-paced, technical, emotional. It raised the bar for what a wrestling match could be in the WWF. Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage meticulously planned their match move for move, over 150 spots, rehearsed and memorized. Savage, known for being obsessive with detail, helped create one of the most influential matches in WWE history. Fans still talk about it like it's gospel. Second, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. This was the big one. Andre was billed as undefeated for 15 years, a mountain of a man, and Hogan was the golden boy. The story was simple. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object. And then came the moment. Hogan slammed Andre. A body slam on a man weighing over 500 pounds. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't pretty, but it was legendary. The crowd erupted. That slam became the image of WrestleMania. Andre the Giant was in serious pain leading up to the main event. His back was so bad that just walking to the ring was a struggle. But he still went out there, did the match, and let Hogan slam him, something Andre had never allowed anyone to do on that stage. It was his way of passing the torch. WrestleMania III wasn't just a show, it was the moment wrestling felt truly massive, and it proved that moments matter more than moves. And this event delivered moments that still echo decades later. WrestleMania IV was all about one thing: the World Wrestling Federation Championship. March 27th, 1988, Atlantic City, inside Trump Plaza. Well, Trump Plaza was the host, but the actual arena was Boardwalk Hall, just branded with Trump's name. It gave the show a strange vibe, upscale, subdued crowd, lots of suits, not the typical rowdy wrestling atmosphere. The title was vacant going in, thanks to a chaotic storyline involving Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, and a referee twin screwjob. So instead of a typical card, WWF went tournament style. 14 men, one night, one tournament to crown a new champion. The setup was ambitious, but it made for a long night. A lot of matches were short, some forgettable. The tournament featured 16 total matches across the night, still the most matches on a single WrestleMania card. A lot of them were under 5 minutes just to keep the show moving. The story that carried through was about Macho Man Randy Savage. He wrestled 4 times in one night and made it all the way to the finals, where he faced Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. Randy Savage changed his outfit for every round of the tournament, 4 different gear sets in one night. Only Macho Man would treat a tournament like a fashion show and a war zone at the same time. Savage got the win with some backup from Hulk Hogan at ringside. It was a watershed moment, Hogan helping Savage win gold, then lifting his arm in the air post-match. The crowd bought in. The Mega Powers Alliance was born. WrestleMania IV might not have had the best matches, but it told a complete story. One that set the stage for Savage's rise, DiBiase's heat, and the eventual implosion of the Mega Powers. WrestleMania V was all about the fallout. 1 year after standing side by side, the Mega Powers exploded. April 2nd, 1989, back at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, same venue as the year before, but this time it was personal. The main event was Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWF Championship. It wasn't just about the title. It was about jealousy, betrayal, and Miss Elizabeth caught in the middle. Savage thought Hogan was getting too close to her. Hogan thought Savage had lost his mind. The promos leading up to it were pure gold, intense, emotional, real enough that fans weren't sure where the act ended. The Mega Powers storyline wasn't just a wrestling feud. It played out like a full-on drama over the course of a year, with tension teased in subtle ways long before the blow-up. By the time they hit the ring, the crowd was fully locked in. Miss Elizabeth was kept neutral during the main event, standing in a corner that wasn't Hogan's or Savage's. Her presence added real emotional weight to the match, and fans were genuinely invested in her just as much as the two wrestlers. Hogan eventually went over, big boot, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, and won back the title. The Mega Powers were officially dead, and Hogan was back on top. The rest of the card had some solid moments. Rick Rude beating Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental title was a highlight. Rick Rude became the first person to pin Ultimate Warrior in a WWF match thanks to a little help from his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan. It gave Rude huge credibility and set up Warrior's rise even stronger in the long run. But this show lived and died by the main event. It was wrestling soap opera at its finest. WrestleMania V might not have had the biggest crowd or the flashiest set, but it had a red-hot story. And that's what made it work. When wrestling feels personal, it hits harder. This one hit. WrestleMania VI wasn't just another big show. It was a generational moment. April 1st, 1990, Toronto Sky Dome. Over 67,000 fans packed the place. The first WrestleMania held outside the US, and the vibe was electric. The Sky Dome crowd brought a different energy, less rowdy, but loud and invested the whole night. This time, it wasn't about good versus evil, it was about icon versus icon. Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, champion versus champion, title versus title. Both guys were babyfaces. Both were massively over. The fans were split. The WWF leaned into it. It was billed as the ultimate challenge. Hogan, the established legend, versus Warrior, the wild card rising star. And surprisingly, it delivered. Warrior and Hogan didn't put on a technical masterpiece, but the match had energy, suspense, and real emotion. Pat Patterson helped lay out the main event move by move. Warrior wasn't known for in-ring finesse, but with careful planning, they pulled off a match that had pacing and drama, one of the best of Warrior's career. In the end, Warrior cleanly beat Hogan, a passing of the torch moment right in the middle of the ring. Hogan even handed him the belt afterwards, selling the moment with a rare nod of humility. That ending was huge. Hogan had never lost clean like that on such a big stage. This wasn't just a win, it was a shift. WrestleMania VI felt like a true changing of the guard. Even though Warrior's reign wouldn't last long, that moment, standing over Hogan holding both belts in the air, felt like the future had arrived. WrestleMania VII was originally set for the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, a massive outdoor stadium that would have held over 100,000 people. But a few months before the show, WWF moved it to the smaller LA Sports Arena. Officially, it was because of security concerns. Unofficially, they couldn't fill the seats. The main event was Sergeant Slaughter, as an Iraqi sympathizer, defending the WWF Championship against the All-American Hulk Hogan. Yeah, this was during the Gulf War. WWF leaned hard into the real-world tension. It was wild. Slaughter burned an American flag on TV, kind of, and Hogan was positioned as the savior of America. It was pure wrestling theater dialed up to 11. Hogan won the belt and waved the flag, classic Hulkamania moment, loud, over the top, and totally on brand. But the real heat of the show? Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior in a career-ending match. The match featured 5 consecutive elbow drops from Savage, and Warrior still kicked out. That level of drama was unheard of at the time. Warrior won, but what happened after the bell was unforgettable. Miss Elizabeth, who'd been off-screen for months, came out of the crowd and saved Savage from an attack by Sensational Sherry. Savage and Elizabeth reunited in the ring. Fans were crying, grown men legit in tears. It turned Savage babyface again, and might have been the most emotional moment in WrestleMania history up to that point. WrestleMania VII didn't break attendance records or produce 5-star classics, but it felt big. It was dramatic, chaotic, and full of character arcs that paid off. Jake the Snake Roberts brought out a live Cobra during his match with Rick Martel in a blindfold match, one of the weirdest bouts ever booked. Fans had to help guide Jake by cheering when he got close to Martel. Silly? Yes. Memorable? Definitely. WrestleMania VII had politics, pageantry, and pure pro wrestling soap opera. Not perfect, but unforgettable in its own way. WrestleMania VIII went down on April 5th, 1992, inside the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis. Over 60,000 fans showed up, and the card looked stacked. You had Ric Flair as WWF champion, Hulk Hogan possibly wrestling his last match, and Randy Savage right back in the spotlight. On paper, it felt big, but the way it all played out, kinda strange. Everyone expected Hogan versus Flair, dream match, right? It had never happened on a WWF stage, but for whatever reason, politics, timing, backstage drama, they didn't book it. Instead, Ric Flair defended the WWF Championship against Randy Savage, while Hogan took on Sid Justice in the main event. Flair vs. Savage was a classic and had a killer build. Flair cut promos holding up fake photos of himself and Elizabeth, pretending they were lovers. Savage was so furious he didn't even wait for his entrance. He sprinted to the ring. Savage was unhinged, angry, ready to fight dirty. They went to war, and Savage pulled off the win. Emotional, gritty, and with Flair bleeding all over the place like it was NWA 1986. Easily the match of the night. Then came the Hogan-Sid main event, and it went sideways. The match was flat, and the finish was a mess. Papa Shango missed his cue to interfere, so Sid had to kick out of Hogan's leg drop, which almost never happened. Then the Ultimate Warrior ran back in. Surprise return, huge pop to save Hogan and send the crowd home happy. The whole thing felt like chaos patched together on the fly. The Ultimate Warrior's return was kept completely secret. No leaks, no promos. When he ran out to save Hogan, the crowd erupted. It was Warrior's first appearance in months and one of the loudest reactions of the night. Shawn Michaels had his first singles WrestleMania match here against Tito Santana. It wasn't a classic, but it quietly marked the beginning of HBK's rise as a solo star. WrestleMania VIII felt like a crossroads. Savage reclaimed the title, Warrior returned, Hogan looked like he was on his way out, and Flair, well, he bled all over the Hoosier Dome like a true champion. WrestleMania IX was something. April 4th, 1993, live from Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Outdoor setting, Roman theme, announcers in togas, including Jim Ross making his WWF debut while literally wearing a toga on his first night. He was weird from the jump. The show tried to go big with the visuals, but the actual content, rough. The main event was Yokozuna versus Bret Hitman Hart for the WWF Championship. Bret was the fighting champ, the workhorse. Yoko was the massive new heel being built as unstoppable. And you know what? The match was solid. Bret worked hard, had the crowd behind him until the ending. Yokozuna wins, kind of cheap thanks to Mr. Fuji throwing salt in Bret's eyes. The crowd stunned. Then Hulk Hogan shows up, completely unannounced. Fuji challenges Hogan on the spot to fight Yoko for the title. Hogan steps in, hits a clothesline and a leg drop, and wins the belt in like 22 seconds. It made zero sense. Bret just lost his title, and now Hogan's champion again, after not even being in the match. Fans were confused. Bret was supposed to be the new guy, the future. Instead, the 80s walked back in and took the spotlight. WrestleMania IX was flashy, but creatively all over the place. It looked cool, but the storytelling, not so much. The Undertaker wrestled Giant Gonzalez, a man in a full bodysuit with airbrushed muscles and fur patches. The match was so bad it became infamous. Gonzalez chloroformed Taker, leading to a DQ. Yes, a disqualification at WrestleMania. Lex Luger debuted as the Narcissist, complete with mirrors, pyro, and posing. WWF clearly wanted him to be the next big thing, but the crowd didn't really bite. It was flashy, but flat. WrestleMania IX tried to mix new stars with old ones, Roman vibes with Vegas flash, but it ended up feeling like a fever dream. And the Hogan ending? One of the most random, criticized finishes in Mania history. WrestleMania X, March 20th, 1994, back at Madison Square Garden, right where it all began. No togas, no giant guys in fursuits, just wrestling. This show marked a shift. Less cartoon, more competition. The company was clearly moving away from the Hogan era and betting on new talent to carry the torch. The two standout matches, straight up classics. First, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart in the opener. Brother versus brother. Owen had snapped, jealous of Bret's spotlight, and he wanted to prove he was just as good, maybe better. And they delivered an absolute technical masterpiece. Owen got the clean win in the end, shocking the crowd. It was his night for about 2 hours. Because in the main event, Bret Hart fought Yokozuna, again, for the WWF Championship. And this time, Bret got his redemption. He beat Yoko clean, and the locker room emptied out to celebrate with him. Bret was the guy now. The crowd knew it, the company knew it, and the show ended with him on top. But it wasn't just about Bret and Owen. The other classic, Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels in the first ever televised ladder match in WWF history. For the Intercontinental title, this match changed the game. Shawn flew around like a maniac. Razor brought the power, and they both risked everything. It wasn't just a title match, it was a blueprint for the future. The ladder match between Shawn and Razor wasn't actually the first WWF ladder match. Bret Hart and Shawn had done one at a house show prior to this. But this was the first time most fans ever saw one, and it stole the show. Lex Luger also had a WWF title shot that night, earlier in the card, but got disqualified. He was supposed to be the guy at one point, but by the end of the night, it was clear. Bret was the real top star. WrestleMania X didn't have the biggest names or the flashiest presentation, but it had heart. No pun intended. It proved WWF could move forward without Hogan, and that the next generation had already arrived. WrestleMania X was about proving wrestling could carry the show again, and with guys like Bret, Shawn, and Owen, it absolutely did. By the time WrestleMania X wrapped up in Madison Square Garden, the message was clear. The glitz was still there, but the future belonged to the wrestlers. The new generation was rising. Bret Hart stood tall. Shawn Michaels was ready to fly. And the foundation laid in these first 10 years, it changed wrestling forever. The party was over. Now it was time to prove who could carry the business forward. This is the story of WrestleMania. All right, it is discussion time. That's what the sign said.
Discussion time.
Coming in. So we're going to talk about it. First 10 WrestleManias, and you said this at the beginning, they started off slow.
They did.
Putting these together, I realized I talked about a lot less of the actual card for most of these than I did later on.
One of the... and it's so funny to go back and watch them because you could tell the first couple of them were not like real well thought out, because there is, I think it's in WrestleMania II, there is like a backstage interview that just like he's doing the interview and then people just walk in front of him and he goes and we're back. Like
WrestleMania 1 was a bit of a gambit that paid off, but if that didn't have the celebrity involvement, like Mr. T being in the main event, Cyndi Lauper, Muhammad Ali, if all of that hadn't clicked, how different do you think the future of WrestleMania would be, or if there even would be one?
I don't know. I mean, WrestleMania, it clicked, but it wasn't like, hey, this is something we have to have every year, you know? And they didn't have it for another couple of years after that, because I think the next one was in 88 or something like that, wasn't it? When
they had a celebrity in a match?
Oh, with a celebrity in a match.
I'm just talking about celebrities at all. They always have some celebrity involvement, but... I thought that's what you were talking about.
No, I'm sorry. Maybe I just wasn't listening to anything you asked me.
Good start.
No, so like... Cyndi Lauper is such an odd choice, even at that time to me.
Maybe.
And especially like if you told a wrestling fan now that didn't know anything about WrestleMania 1 or the 80s, and you were like, what happened to WrestleMania 1? Oh, well, Hulk Hogan, or no, it wasn't. It was, who was in that main event? Was it Paul Orndorff?
Paul Orndorff
and Piper.
Yeah, Roddy Piper.
And it was Paul Orndorff with Cyndi Lauper, and she came down, and Roddy Piper and Cyndi Lauper got into, like, this is a weird thing to be doing. I think Mr. T was an obvious shoe-in for, like, hey, this is a great thing to do. But yeah, I don't know. I think there would definitely be a future in WrestleMania without those things clicking. I don't think those particular appearances made a big difference.
Yeah.
I don't think they made a huge impact. And maybe I'm just downplaying the cultural impact of girls just want to have fun. But
well, I'm just trying to remember the 80s itself. Like I know I don't remember the 80s as living through them.
Yeah.
Because I was 5 at the most.
Yes.
But they were, it was a heavy music time. Like those were the celebrities.
Yeah.
Like we had actors, but we didn't have we have celebrity fatigue today with YouTubers and TikTokers and all that taking up a bunch of the lower spots. But back then, you had who you knew about, and everybody knew about Cyndi Lauper, and everybody knew about Mr. T. Liberace was there.
You forget Liberace. Just pulling guys in off the street. I mean, that's,
I think I like the idea of making it a more cultural connection with mainstream celebrities trying to pull in new viewers to the big show.
And I think it worked because, WrestleMania became sort of an onboarding for people to get into wrestling. Like, it was an on-ramp.
It still is.
For wrestling. Yeah, it is. It's still, but like that was what it really started serving as. And so when you have your celebrity show up, like that helps attract people. I will never forget, it's my favorite Cyndi Lauper story, is she was on Celebrity Apprentice, hosted by the President of the United States. And they had to do like a pop-up burger stand, and her burger stand lost money because she kept giving away free food to the people waiting in line. And he was like, you can't just give away all the free food. And she's like, yeah, but people were hungry. And he's like, okay, that's why they showed up, to give you money for food. And she goes, but they were waiting, and they were hungry. And he's like, I don't know how to explain to you basic supply and demand.
This is how stores work.
You wait in line to get what you want, to pay for what you want.
That's funny. So in WrestleMania VI, we had a face versus face match.
Yes.
Which there have been a handful of in WrestleManias, but it's such a rare thing because you're usually building a contemptuous storyline. So it's rare to have a, hey, you good? I good? Let's do something even better. And it doesn't really...
Wait, who exactly are you impersonating here?
I was doing kind of both at the same time. I don't have no idea what Ultimate Warrior sounds like. I don't remember it whatsoever. So let's just say he's that, halfway.
He's that, yeah.
Boston? I'm sure he's from Boston.
Michigan. Close.
That'd be quiet. So we have a face versus face match, which means going in, you already know, unless one of them is turning heel, which I would say wasn't as big of a thing back then.
Yeah.
Like, you had clearly defined bad guys and good guys, and it was usually, if a face was going to become a heel, it wasn't just out of nowhere. Like, we saw Randy Savage go crazy.
Yeah.
Over the course of a whole year.
Oh, yeah.
And like it was big buildup, and so we weren't expecting that from Hulk Hogan. Definitely not from Hogan, and we weren't expecting that from Ultimate Warrior either. And so that also kind of means it might be a bit of a boring match. It's just going to be a straight. It's okay if it's a really banger, like technical masterpiece. Hulk Hogan's not known for that.
No.
Ultimate Warrior was kind of garbage in the ring. Pat Patterson did a pretty good job of putting together the choreography for that match. But still, personally, I feel like there's something left to be desired from that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think the ultimate challenge, the face versus face, the champion versus champion, do you think that's a WrestleMania event?
Yeah, I think so, because like at the time, and I mean, we'd have to go back through the roster, but like, who else did you have for either one of those guys? You know, and the like Hogan and Warrior was what we wanted to see. Was that one for the Intercontinental Championship, or was that just?
It was for both titles. He was in. I think it was Intercontinental, and Hogan was World Champion, and it was title versus title.
Okay.
He left with 2 belts.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
2 belts. Yeah, so I mean that puts a little bit on the line, but I think at the time, like, you really didn't need like a bad guy versus good guy. You had Ultimate Warrior, who was a big deal, and you had Hulk Hogan, who was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And you put them both in the ring together, and it turns out when you look back on it, was it the greatest? No. Was it a great story? No. But
Did it pan out afterwards? Not really.
yeah, but do we still enjoy going back and looking at it and talking about it?
Yeah.
Also, no, not really.
WrestleMania IX is remembered for the bizarre ending where Hogan comes out after the main event. It's Bret Hart versus Yokozuna. Bret Hart was the champion. He just lost to Yokozuna. Hogan just comes out, and Mr. Fuji's like, "You challenge Yokozuna right now."
Yeah.
Why is the manager
Making,
of the champion saying, "Hey, let's give you a free shot while he's tired"?
yeah.
And then Hogan's like, "Oh, well, I'm here.
Yeah.
Might as well." And then he leaves the champion. Bret's over there disheveled. Like, what just happened here?
Yeah.
I didn't lose to Hulk Hogan. Why is Hogan walking away champ? Was that one of the worst booked Mania finishes ever?
I mean, yeah, but it goes back to this whole thing. What year was that?
That
That was 93.
Yeah, it would have been 93.
93.
Yeah, 93.
And like this is just before Hogan's bailing to go to WCW. This was in a couple of years after that. Hogan is white hot, but he comes out and he's just gotten into a car wreck. Like, what was it, that day?
I don't remember.
Like, he came with like there was,
He had the black eye thing.
like, his eye was all messed up. They just released a documentary on Peacock about WrestleMania IX.
Oh, really?
Yes, because it
Okay.
was like the first one. They were like, we're gonna do some behind the scenes, and it's just a bunch of footage of wrestlers going, "Why are you filming us?"
What's
And that
your
was
angle?
it was an hour and a half of them going, "Why are you doing this?"
Just camera walking in and everyone just staring at it.
Yeah, there's literally a scene where they pan over and they see the Undertaker, and the Undertaker looks up and goes, and like that's until the camera goes away. That's just. But no, yeah, it's. But at the time, again, we're pandering to Hogan. We're pandering to Hulkamania. Hulkamania is still a big deal. This is before the internet, so Hulk Hogan could still be popular. Once the internet comes in, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, it's
Not
it's
able
one
to
of
hide
those,
everything.
It's one of those situations where it seems like they kind of did it to preserve a Bret versus Hogan thing possibly in the future.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure that ever happened, at least not at WrestleMania.
Not in WWE.
Yeah. And so like the only thing I can think of is it was just for that. It was just to make Hogan feel like king of the WrestleMania, even though it wasn't his night anyway.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of another reason. Now, we've done things like that in future shows, but there's always been a MacGuffin. There's always been a reason, a Money in the Bank cash in or something that is established. This was just, I still don't understand why it wouldn't have been better for Hulk Hogan to be the one to say, I'm going to challenge you right now. Sense. Why? Why, Mr. Fuji?
It don't work for me, brother. Like,
I think this also may have hindered Bret Hart's rise early on. We eventually got him to the point.
We'll talk more about Bret Hart as the day goes on, but or as this week goes on. But you know, the more and more I look back at Bret Hart, the more and more I think maybe Bret really did mess up Bret. Maybe we remember him differently.
Well, speaking of Bret, in WrestleMania X, we had two all-timers, Bret versus Owen.
Yes.
Which was a classic match. I wasn't even, watching wrestling during these times, but I have gone back and watched the two matches we're talking about here. Fantastic matches. Bret versus Owen, and then the first ladder match on WWE TV, Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon. Which of these two holds up better today, you think?
So, again, I have to preface this, like, I'm just not the world's biggest Bret Hart fan. And it's not that I don't think he was good. It's not that I don't think he was talented. He was very talented. You go back and watch that match, and him and Owen tear that place up. But there is, a very popular shot of Shawn Michaels doing a frog splash out of the ring off of a ladder. And it's like, and again, it's unfair because like I am a very big Shawn Michaels fan.
100%.
So I think all that to be said, I think that if we're just talking about like technical ability and like putting together a match, Bret and Owen put together a really solid match. But from like the entrances, I mean, when Razor Ramon comes in and he's doing his whole thing and he like looks at a ladder and goes under a ladder intentionally,
right.
And like he's telling the story, and there's like these characters, and Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels were 1,000 times more interesting than Bret Hart and Owen Hart.
I agree. I think that match really started to set up not so much gimmick matches, but matches that were a spectacle at WrestleMania. And of course, years later, we would see the double header 2 years in a row with the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Edge and Christian being probably still two of the best ladders or tables, ladders, and chairs matches that have ever occurred. But yeah, I think that set the stage for the spectacle. Like before this moment, I think, before that match, the biggest spectacle we'd seen was Hogan picking up Andre the Giant and body slamming him. Like beyond that, there wasn't anything that was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
But this was a holy cow moment.
Yeah. Before this, we knew who the good guys were and the bad guys were because one of them was Hulk Hogan and the other was a foreigner. And so we could tell who was the good guy and the bad guy. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Hulk Hogan versus Andre. Hulk Hogan versus the Iron Sheik. Hulk Hogan versus Iranian sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter.
During the Gulf War.
You really did that. And
so funny.
We moved past that, you know?
We grew up. All right, last question for today. Over these 10 years, we saw several different WrestleManias surrounding Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. A tumultuous love story that the fans ate up. Why do you think fans were so invested in this couple?
I have no idea. I really don't. I think because the relationship, you talked a little bit about, we watched Macho Man go crazy over a course of several years. And I think a big portion of that was him real life going crazy.
Sure.
With Miss Elizabeth. And but I think that Miss Elizabeth helped push those stories. So yeah, I mean, but other than just Miss Elizabeth was pretty.
I feel like this might have been kind of an early version of reality TV. Because again, back then they were pushing that this was all 100% real anyway, everything you saw on screen.
Yeah.
I feel like this was reality TV before reality TV.
Yeah.
We were given permission to watch people's like kind of intimate feelings play out live on TV.
Yeah.
And even the vast majority of watchers being men.
Yeah.
Who all secretly love reality TV, even though they don't want to admit it.
Don't share our secrets.
Wow. Yeah, I can't believe it. And then,
but because I was thinking about that question, and the reality of it is that was really the last love story that we actually cared about in wrestling. Because they tried to do it more often than that, and it just didn't really work. That's
why theirs was the only successful wedding.
That's true.
On WWE
where they
TV
actually
history.
Got married.
Yeah.
We didn't care about Daniel Bryan and AJ Lee this much.
A little bit. Yeah.
We didn't care. The story with even Edge and Vicky Guerrero, there had to be something extra to that to make us care about that. And so, I think that it was Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth that made people care about them. And thus we care about the relationship.
I will admit, I was pretty intently focused on the Test and Stephanie situation leading up to the Triple H and Stephanie situation.
That's fair.
I was pretty hooked in that when I was a teenager. All right, well, with that, part one of the nerd history of WrestleMania comes to a close. Join us again tomorrow as we tackle the next 10 years of WrestleMania. Subscribe to the Nerd History Podcast via our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@nerdhistoryltn, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Find us on lovethynerd.com/nerdhistorypod. We have our daily Today in Nerd History video short over on YouTube and TikTok. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll kick off with WrestleMania 11, but until then, I am Radio Matt.
And I'm towards John. You threw it to me and I don't have a name.
You do have a name. Your name's John.
I'm John.
Your name's John here. It's John there. It's everywhere. And remember, in the past, present, and future, Jesus loves you, nerds.